So I went to college in Washington State, and my best friend and I, who we lived in Wisconsin, we would make the drive from Wisconsin to Washington every fall, every Christmas, every spring. Now, it was a drive, and we would deadhead it. We would start and just go the entire way. It took us about 36 hours to make the trip. Now, spring and fall, beginning of the school year, end of the school year, that wasn't so bad. But at Christmas break, when we had to drive there and back in the winter time, it was often a white-knuckle drive. I remember one particular winter, we were headed towards Seattle. We got caught in a blizzard just outside of Spokane, Washington. And the snow was somewhere like 8 or 10 inches deep, and the snowplows hadn't made it out as far as we were on the freeway yet. It was dark, it was 2 a.m., and the worst part about it is that we were surrounded by fields of grain, which meant we couldn't distinguish the road from the field. And it looked something, this was before iPhones were invented, of course, and so I would have had a picture, but this is kind of what it looked like when we looked out the windshield, right? You couldn't see a thing. Can you see the road? Yeah, neither can I. So now what we should have done was turned around and gone back to Spokane and got a hotel for the night, but we were 20-year-old kids, and so we just kept on driving. But how could you see the way? Well, hold that thought. We'll come back to it a little bit later. We're in a series called I Am. We're looking at the I Am claims of Jesus, every one of which was a declaration of his divinity, every one of which was an assertion that he was the Messiah who had been foretold by the Old Testament prophets, the anointed one who was himself God. Today's claim is found in John 14, verse 6. This is what it says. Jesus told him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. Now, often when we read this statement of Jesus, we focus on the exclusivity of Jesus' claim. No one can come to the Father except through me. And this claim, by the way, it is an exclusive claim. Jesus really is saying, I am the way. Without me, you can't know God. But Jesus' posture here, it's so important to understand that Jesus' posture here is not one of pushing people away. It's not one of creating boundaries. It's actually one of drawing people toward him, of inviting them into. Okay, so what he's saying is, you want to know God? You want to know his truth and his life? Well, I am the way, so follow me. Let me give you a little bit of context for this statement. Jesus is with his disciples at the Last Supper. It's the last meal they had together. It was the night he was arrested. It was the night before he was crucified. And during the meal, he said some really disturbing things. Here's a sampling. This is John chapter 13, verse 21. Now Jesus was deeply troubled, and he exclaimed, I tell you the truth, one of you will betray me. The disciples looked at each other, wondering whom he could mean. Verse 33, he says, I will be with you only a little longer. And as I told the Jewish leaders, you will search for me, but you can't come where I am going. Verse 36, Simon Peter asked, well, Lord, where are you going? And Jesus replied, you can't go with me now, but you will follow me later. But why can't I come, Lord? He asked. I am ready to die for you. Jesus answered, die for me. I tell you the truth, Peter, before the rooster crows tomorrow morning, you will deny 3 times that you even know me. Question. If you were one of the disciples eating dinner with Jesus that night, how would you be feeling right about now? You'd be afraid, right? Confused, maybe anxious. Well, the disciples certainly were. Now, how do we know this? Well, it's because look what Jesus says next. This is John 14, verse 1. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Okay, he sees that they're disturbed, they're confused, they're afraid. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and trust also in me. So everything that Jesus is about to say, he is saying to help his disciples choose to trust him, to help them actively believe that God is in the midst of this rising, rapidly coming storm. So the main point of this passage here in John 14 is this. Jesus says, there are incredibly difficult days ahead, but you can face them without anxiety. Don't be troubled. Don't be anxious. Instead, choose to trust me in the middle of the mess. See, here's the thing. As followers of Jesus, we can actually learn to live our lives with faith and trust and peace regardless of whatever circumstances we're facing. And Jesus, He invites us to step into that. He empowers us to experience that, and He beckons us to let Him be the way in our lives. So with that as backdrop, what does it mean for Jesus to be the way in our lives? Well, let's explore this passage some more and find out. Here's John 14, starting again in verse 1. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and trust also in me. There is more than enough room in my Father's home. If this were not so, would I have told you that I'm going to prepare a place for you? When everything is ready, I will come and get you, so that you will always be with me where I am. First observation is this: that Jesus is the way means that through Him I have a good and hope-filled future. That Jesus is the way means that through Him I have a good and hope-filled future. Jesus here, He says, you know what? There's more than enough room, and I'm going to prepare a place. And when it's ready, I will come and get you. In other words, I have a future for you, and it is full of hope and life and beauty and meaning and purpose and more. So, Jesus is saying, when things get stirred up, when everything hits the fan, trust me. Trust me. And remember that what you're experiencing now is not the way that things will always be. Don't be troubled. I am the way. I have a good future for you. Author Os Guinness tells a really haunting story about a 19th century Japanese haiku poet named Issa. And when he was a young child, Issa's mother died, and that was the first of many tragedies in his life. And many years and many sorrows later, his daughter died. Issa went to a Zen Buddhist master for solace. And the master reminded Issa what Zen Buddhism teaches, which is that the world is an illusion. The world is an illusion, and like the morning dew, our lives will evaporate with the rising sun. Now, although Issa remained committed to his Buddhist worldview, he still yearned for a deeper hope. And when he returned home, he wrote this poem. Listen to it. The world is dew. The world is dew. And yet, and yet. And Guinness makes this comment. He said, here's a truth that should make us stand still in our tracks. Issa, the Orthodox Zen believer, must say that life is only dew, but Issa, the father, the husband, the human being, with his agonized grief and tortured love, can only cry into the unfulfilled darkness where Zen sheds no light. And yet, he feels the inescapable tension between the logic of what he believes and the logic of who he is. You know, there is something inside each of us that cries, and yet, isn't there? Something in each of us that longs for more. There must be more. And Jesus here, when he says, I am the way, he's saying there is more, and I am the way. I am the way to more. And then the future that I have prepared for you is immeasurably and unimaginably good. I can and I will take you there if you will follow me. And then that last part is the tricky part, following Jesus and believing that he really does have a good future for us. Because it's hard to imagine a good future sometimes, isn't it? I mean, let's talk about the last 2 years. COVID basically shut down our lives for the last 2 years, during which we had a national political meltdown, an ideological meltdown. Researchers at Boston College, they did a study of 1.5 million Americans and found that the anxiety and depression rate in 2020 was actually 6 times higher than it was in 2019. And by the way, the actual rate in the population was 45%. 45% of Americans felt anxious and depressed. And if you're in your 20s, that number bumps up to 60%. Yikes. And now, how do we top it off? Well, there's a war in Ukraine. The world has gone mad, hasn't it? And there's so much to be troubled about these days. What are you troubled about these days? What keeps you awake at night? What gives you indigestion? Listen to the words of Jesus, the way, in John 14:1. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and trust also in me. There is more than enough room in my Father's house. If this were not so, would I have told you? I'm going to prepare a place for you. When everything is ready, I will come and get you, so that you will always be with me where I am. No matter how badly things go, even if the world was destroyed in a nuclear holocaust, Jesus says, I am the way. Follow me, trust me, rest in me. All right, let's keep reading. Start in verse 3 again. When everything is ready, I will come and get you, so that you will always be with me where I am, and you know the way to where I am going. No, we don't, Lord, Thomas said. We have no idea where you're going, so how can we know the way? Jesus told him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. Second truth. Well, first of all, don't you love Thomas's honesty here? He says what all the other disciples are thinking, right? It's like, Jesus, you said we know the way you're going. No, we don't. We don't know where you're going, Jesus. How can we possibly get there if we don't know our destination? Here's a second truth. The way is a person, not a path. The way is a person, Jesus, not a path. You know, so often we approach our spiritual life or our life with God as a map to be followed and a list to be carried out. You know, if I can just get enough items checked off, if I can just attain some enlightened state, if I can carefully take the right steps, if I can find the right map, then maybe I will find what I'm looking for. During the pandemic, science writer Michael Bond wrote an article entitled, Why Humans Totally Freak Out When They Get Lost. What a great title. And there's a good reason we freak out when we get lost, he says, because without help, we are actually unable to find our way home. And here's what he writes. He says, researchers used GPS monitors to track numerous volunteers as they tried to walk in a straight line without technology through Germany's dense Beerenwald forest or the Sahara Desert. When clouds obstructed the sun, errors quickly accumulated. Small deviations became large ones, and they ended up walking in circles. And then listen to this. He writes, with no external cues to help them, people will not travel more than around 100 yards from their starting position, regardless of how long they walk. In the absence of landmarks and boundaries, our head direction cells cannot compute direction and distance, and they leave us flailing in space. Now, what's true of our brains is true of our souls. What's true physically is also true spiritually. When Jesus says, I am the way, he's saying, listen, it's not how you get there, because you can't get there. You won't get there. You'll get hopelessly lost. It's not how will you get there, it's who's going to take you. And the way he answers that, of course, is I am. I will take you. I am the way. Follow me. Sit with me. Be with me, and I will take you there. Let me lead you into the truth of your purpose. Let me take you into the life that your heart longs for. I am the way to get to the truth and the life your soul desires. Our natural tendency is to identify the secret, to start the right program, to try to crack the code so we can get where we want to go. And what Jesus is basically saying here to Thomas and the disciples is, well, the bad news, Thomas, is that there is no code, okay? There is no mysterious way. But the good news is, Thomas, there is no code. There's no secret handshake. There's no hidden map. The way is standing right in front of you. All you need to do is follow me. And you know what? When we realize that, with that realization that I don't have to strive and scheme and work and strain and then wonder and hope that I'm headed in the right direction, with that realization that I don't have to do that, there comes enormous freedom and peace. And by the way, to let Jesus be the way doesn't mean that don't worry because everything will be okay. It's don't worry, because even though you will face hardship and opposition, even though you will end up in storms, Jesus says, I am in control and I will bring you safely through it. I am the way. Follow me. Rest in me. Trust me. So, where in your life are you following a path instead of the person of Jesus? The way is a person, not a path. Self-help is great, but like we already said, it'll only get you about 100 yards from where you started and you end up walking in circles. If you want to find the way, don't look for a path. Look to the person of Jesus. All right, back to verse 6. Jesus told him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. If you had really known me, you would know who my Father is. From now on, you do know him and have seen him. Philip said, Lord, show us the Father, and we will be satisfied. Jesus replied, have I been with you all this time, Philip, and yet you still don't know who I am? Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. So why are you asking me to show him to you? Don't you believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me? The words I speak are not my own, but my Father who lives in me does his work through me. Just believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me, or at least believe because of the work that you've seen me do. And here's the third truth. Jesus, the way, is accessed through belief. Jesus, the way, is accessed through belief. Verse 11, just believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me. Now, there are two acts of belief that Jesus refers to here. All right, the first act of belief is when I become a follower, become his follower for the very first time. When I choose to believe that Jesus is the way and that through his death on the cross and his resurrection that he has the power to take my sin, to forgive me, to make me right with God, and I give him control of my life. Okay, that's the first belief. In that moment, I step into the way that Jesus provides. In that moment, I have the certainty that one of those rooms in the Father's home is mine, and that when Jesus comes back, he'll take me with him. That's the first act of belief. The second act is choosing each day to renew that belief. All right, the second kind of belief is choosing every day to live it out and let it in. Choosing to trust Jesus instead of myself, and therefore choosing not to worry, but rather to rest. The first act of belief, the first kind of belief, it happens once. You give yourself to Christ. The second kind of belief, at least for me, happens every day, sometimes multiple times a day. It is a very active process that requires great intentionality because my default, honestly, my default is not to believe. My default is to be troubled. My default is to dwell on everything that could go wrong and then try to fix it, try to control it. But Jesus says very clearly, don't. Don't. Instead, believe in me. Trust in me, because I am the way, you're not. I am the way. Stop relying on yourself. Stop relying on your own power. Stop relying on your own fix. Now, of course, this doesn't mean, the lawn needs mowing. I sure hope Jesus takes care of it. Okay, what we're talking about here is an inner attitude of striving for control, including all the stuff that we can't control, which is pretty much everything, right? But we still try to control it. You might think about it this way. To grasp for control, me grasping for control, is to say to Jesus, I know the way and I'll get there on my own. That's what me striving for control really is. To which Jesus says, no, I am the way. You're not the way. I am the way, and I invite you to choose to believe that and to release control to me. Now, I understand this is hard and it maybe even feels impossible. And so maybe you need to pray my favorite prayer. It's Mark 9, verse 24. It's a father talking to Jesus who is about to heal his son. He said, I do believe, but help my unbelief. I believe, help my unbelief. And listen, Jesus loves that prayer. Because Jesus never says, if you have a certain baseline of faith, then I am the way. Or if you can build up enough belief, then I am the way. No, he just says, listen, I am the way. Enter into that way with any amount of faith. Trust me as much as you are able. And that is sufficient, because it's not about a path. It's about a person. Back to Spokane. Driving on a highway that we couldn't see. How did we ever make it to Seattle? Well, every half mile on I-90, there's one of these reflector at the edge of the shoulder. And so we drove from Spokane partway to Seattle with our bi-reflector light. We kept our eyes on the reflectors. We made sure we stayed close to them, but not too close so we didn't drive off the road. And in that way, we drove until the snowplows finally caught up with us and cleared the road so we could see. Hebrews 12, verse 1. Let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. And let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. There are so many times in our lives, days, months, sometimes even years, when we can't see down the road, when we can't even figure out where the road is. And so we just set out, sometimes with great certainty, other times with great anxiety, and either way we just end up going in circles, 100 yards from where we started. And Jesus offers us a much better alternative. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. If you want to make your way to God, keep your eyes on me. If you want to experience the truth, keep your eyes on me. If you want to experience the life, keep your eyes on me. I have such a good future for you if you will only trust me, believe in me, rest in me, and let me be the way in your life in this moment, right now. What would it look like for you to accept right now Jesus' invitation not to be troubled? How do you need to let Jesus be the way in your life today? Maybe for you, it's taking that first step of belief, that first act of choosing to follow him for the very first time. If that's the case, man, we would love to help you do that and show you what it means. You go to that Crossing Connect link and just say, hey, I want to find out more about becoming a follower of Jesus. Or maybe letting Jesus be the way for you today means choosing to trust him right now with that thing that is troubling you or the situation that you're desperately trying to control. Instead of grasping for control and trying to fix it, what you need to do, instead of fixing your eyes on that problem, is fix your eyes on Jesus, the way. And very purposefully and intentionally lift it up to Him and surrender to Him and say, Lord, I know you have this. You are the way. Help me follow. Hear the words of Jesus. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and trust also in me, because I am the way, the truth, and the life. Let's pray. Jesus, I pray for every person who is with me right now. And Lord, I don't know where they are on their spiritual journey, but I ask that you will help each one of us to take a step toward you of faith, of belief. Take a step into the way. Lord, for those who have never done that, I pray that you'll give them the courage to take that very first step and to let us help them take that step and to experience your life for the first time. And then, Lord, for those of us who have followed you but are stuck somewhere or trying to drive all by ourselves and end up in circles, would you give us the courage to admit that and instead to fix our eyes on you? Jesus, you have promised that you are the way. That doesn't mean we always know which way you're going or how that way will go or what it will feel like. It doesn't mean there won't be trouble and trial and challenge and difficulty. But we thank you that you have a good future for us no matter what, and that you are with us. Please help us to trust you more. In your name we pray. Amen. We'll see you next time.